Now there are questions over whether the game of rugby is becoming too violent.
30-year-old Seamus Lavelle suffered serious head injuries and brain damage in what police described as an off-the-ball altercation during the match between Hendon and Centaurs on Saturday. He was flown by helicopter to the London hospital, where an emergency operation was ruled out. He was on a life support machine until he died this afternoon.
What can one say about the guy? He was a character in local rugby. A lot of the other local clubs knew him, and knew his humour. He will be really, really badly missed by the club and all the players.
A 23-year-old Centaurs player was questioned by police after the incident and released without charge on police bail. Meanwhile, the Rugby Football Union has denied that an accepted level of violence has developed in the game.
People will get upset from time to time, and that's when the discipline comes in. That's when good refereeing has its part to play, and that's when selectors have to make it clear to players that unless they maintain their discipline, they won't be selected.
The RFU has launched its own inquiry into Saturday's incident. It's also stressed the rules on misconduct in its own handbook. Foul play on the field will not be tolerated under any circumstances. Simon Cumbers, ITN, Twickenham.
The great storm in America has now left more than 100 people dead. Gales, blizzards and raging seas are still lashing all of the East Coast. In one state, North Carolina, scores of young hikers are missing. 100 more in Tennessee are still out in the open because the weather's too wild to rescue them.
From Cuba to Canada, they're counting the cost of the storm of the century. Digging out across a 1,000-mile swathe of the United States, Florida recovering from more than 50 typhoons, planes scattered and smashed like matchsticks at one airport. A huge tidal swell crushed this private boat worth £7 million. High seas off Canada have engulfed a cargo ship. It's thought all 33 on board have drowned. Overall, more than 100 people may have died in the storm, though some states are counting many victims of heart attacks and road accidents. There's never been such disruption at so many airports. At a runway open, the planes freeze up, and inside, they haven't enough crews to fly them. Hundreds of thousands didn't make it back to work today, though some did try to make that telephone call. Much of the East Coast is either engulfed or at a standstill. The blizzard of '93 is gone, but not forgotten. The storm may prove one disaster too many for some insurance companies. They're still catching their breath after the bombing of the World Trade Center and after paying out more than £12 billion from Hurricane Andrew 6 months ago. The damages from this storm will be massive. Bill Neely, ITN, Washington.
Scientists have discovered an inherited gene that could be the cause of some breast cancer and some ovarian cancer. About 2,000 women die every year from cancer caused by this defective gene. It's thought drugs could soon be developed to correct it.
Perhaps as many as 1 in 10 women who suffer from breast cancer do so because they carry a defective gene. Scientists say these women run a 60% chance of being hit by breast or ovarian cancer before they're 50. A dramatic increase. Now researchers say they're close to identifying the gene responsible.
Although at the moment it only applies to a few women in these very high-risk families, we think there will be implications for breast and ovarian cancer in general. We think that understanding this gene will help us to understand the disease in the general population as well.
Scientists say the defective gene linked to ovarian and breast cancer will be identified within a year or so, and new treatments could then follow soon after. Doctors say in the long run the new discovery will help them to treat women with the defective gene and to understand the biology of 2 cancers which between them kill 20,000 women a year. Lawrence McGinty, ITN, Central London.
There's little healthy pre-budget news for the Chancellor Norman Lamont tonight. Factory production has increased more than expected, up 0.8%, which is the biggest monthly rise for nearly a year. To our political editor now, Michael Brunson at Westminster. Michael, what options does the Chancellor have?
Well, John, despite that good news you've just mentioned, his main option is a pretty horrible one. It's whether to put up indirect taxes now or whether to put them up later in the year, because most people agree that public borrowing is out of control and that some kind of tax rise is the only way to counteract that. And we've had Nigel Lawson, the former Chancellor, today saying that taxes ought to go up now by some £6 billion, because the argument against that is that if you do that, you might hurt the recovery.
And what about the Chancellor's own position?
Well, there are some for whom the Chancellor now can do no good at all. You won't be surprised to hear that Gordon Brown, the Shadow Chancellor, has just been talking in a speech about the alibi Chancellor always being somewhere else when the blame's being handed out. But it does seem that Mr Lawson is probably now secure. Some Tories saying he ought to be on hand to deliver the Part 2 of the budget later on in the year. Others saying that because the Chancellor's in problems over, the government's in problems over Maastricht, that there can't be a reshuffle at the moment anyway.
Thank you, Mike. People in Lytham St Anne's in Lancashire are furious about a new machine that works just like a bank cash dispenser, but this one gives out soft porn videos. People who use it have their own secret PIN number, just like a cash machine, and it's available 24 hours a day.
It looks like a cash dispenser, but it is in fact a porn dispenser. Any sort of pornography, on video, available to adult customers with a card and a personal number. They were loading up the cassettes in Lytham St Anne's adult shop this afternoon in preparation for the start of business tomorrow.
Obviously I need to know people for a certain length of time for a certain classification, but I will be asking for proof of identification and all sorts of things like that.
But in a resort known more for its genteel pace of life than its porn, the machine is proving something of a turn-off to the locals.
He should be run out of town. Silly little man, that's all he is.
Video from a sex shop? No, thank you. No. Don't want to read about it second-hand, Doss.
Marine biologists are heading for the Orkney Islands tonight to try to save a group of whales trapped in shallow waters in Scapa Flow. If the whales can't get out, they could slowly starve to death.
Like submarines, they plough through the water, spouting together as if by telepathy. The sperm whales moving as a pack after straying here hundreds of miles from their normal habitat in the Atlantic. 50, even 60 feet long, often near the surface, they're confused in these unfamiliar waters. At times they swim less than a mile from the shore. Any closer and the whales could be beached. Wildlife experts say the whales are timid but curious. As long as boats don't try to chase them, they're quite happy to come quite close. Contented they may be now, but there is no food for them in Scapa Flow. With islands and causeways hemming them in, escape may be impossible.
They've been in Scapa Flow now for over a fortnight. They do have considerable fat reserves and probably can maintain themselves for quite a while, but if they are trapped, then obviously we'll have to look at whether we need to take other steps.
Those steps could mean a rescue operation, boats used perhaps to shepherd the whales out of Scapa Flow. Experts will arrive tomorrow to assess the options, but for a while the whales will be left to explore these waters so rich in naval history. The seabed littered with wrecked battleships, leviathans of a previous age. Hugh Pym, ITN, Scapa Flow.
The main news is from the Old Bailey. Until tomorrow, budget day. Bye-bye.
Hello, good evening. There have been some outbreaks of rain around today up in the north and west, but for most of us it's been a glorious day, the warmest day of the year so far for many people, temperatures as high as 20 degrees. And those that were able have been out and about enjoying the sunshine. As you can see from these pictures just outside the studio here, lots of glorious sunshine over much of England and Wales today, or in stark contrast from these pictures from the United States over the last few days. The weather just the other side of the Atlantic, very stormy, as you've no doubt seen in the news reports just over the last day or two. The deep area of low pressure that's producing all that dreadful weather is moving out into the Atlantic now, just behind my head there, coming out into the Atlantic and edging slowly in this direction, but it's going to pass well to the north of Britain, so that by tomorrow it's almost off the top of our screen, you see, just up to the north of Iceland there. But it is close enough to drive these weather fronts south and east across Britain, so some wet and fairly windy weather for the north and west during tomorrow. So let's go back to tonight now then. Well, there's some patchy rain to come tonight. It's already up in the northwest, drifting south and east across England and Wales overnight, most of the rain petering out. But then later in the night, the next band of rain to come into Scotland and Northern Ireland, that will bring some heavier bursts, and with temperatures briefly getting down to around 0, they'll soon rise again as those clouds and stronger winds come into the north. So for tomorrow then, well, England and Wales mostly dry, perhaps just the odd spot of light rain around, certainly more cloud than we saw today, but still some sunny spells for central and eastern parts. But the cloud and heavier rain in the north will come slowly south and east during the day, eventually into northern England and northwest Wales there. The wind's quite strong too from the southwest. Temperatures nowhere near as high as today, still mild for many people, around 13 or 14 in places, but typically I think 9 or 10 at best up in the north, where it will be wet and windy. That's it. Here's the summary.
I want to be a musician.
You want to be earning your keep, my son.
I want to be quitting my first album. I want to be packing them in at Wembley.
You'll probably work your way through more than one job before you can be what you want to be. That's why new Prudential pension plans are designed to change from job to job with you.
Do you know I want to be Bobby's girl?
Oh, no.
Whatever you turn out to be, you'll want the flexibility of a new Prudential pension.
I want to be in the office at 8 on the dot.
There's more to see, more to do, and more bargains at the Daily Mail Ideal Home Plus from March 18th. Don't buy before you've been.
Go on, keep moving. Come on. And don't run. Come on then. Morning. Morning, children.
For these you.
For me. Oh, thanks ever so much.
It's all right.
Magic moments are only found in Quality Street.
Why buy these two when Bold is all-in-one and costs less? And our new powder refill bag saves you even more.
Sainsbury's minced beef is down to £1.8 a pound, the ideal ingredient for bolognese sauce, which is, of course, the perfect partner for Sainsbury's spaghetti, now down to 78p. So for a taste of Italy, travel no further than Sainsbury's.